Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Rocketwoman Show, and this is episode 2. Today, I launch my rocket into an unknown universe. If you've watched last week's show, you will understand that there is something different about the way that I do things. No surprise here. My plan is to always speak with one of my connections, one of my heroes, one of my friends, and then they get to decide who I speak with next. So Amar said, "You've got to go speak with RIO," which I did. RIO and I just got off this beautiful, beautiful 1.5 hour podcast episode, and I'm richer. I'm richer. I've got a friend that I've never known before, and I hope that you all get to enjoy this beautiful wisdom that RIO shared. And yeah, that you like this concept. And next week, I'm going to speak with one of my connections again, and then we're going to do all of this again. So you go enjoy episode 2 and have a lovely day. Bye. Welcome, everybody, to the episode number 2 of the Rocketwoman Show. And today I am joined by somebody very special, somebody that I don't even know. And if you followed the last show with Amar, then you know that my wish for this concept is that every time I'm interviewing one of my heroes, one of my deep connection friends, they then get to tell me who to speak to next. So today I'm joined by RIO, who's a longtime friend of Amar's, and we've just gone into this completely open. I know a little bit about you, RIO. First of all, I'd like to thank you for for saying yes to this experiment, not knowing what you're getting yourself into. But I'm launching my rocket into your orbit to find out a little bit more about your universe. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I love the unknown. So this is perfect.
Yeah, the idea is really to keep expanding our universe and keep exploring new sites and new perspectives. And what better way to do that than follow on the recommendations of the people that I appreciate. So yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, RIO?
I'll tell you where I currently am. Maybe that's the easiest. I'm about to jump off into the unknown yet again, which is something that I'm very familiar with. But currently, I am in a little pueblo in Mexico called San Pancho Beach Town that I've lived in for the last 3 years. And it feels to me like what I'm doing is wrapping up a very deep chapter of my own continued healing and transformation. But the work that I do is kind of a blend of spiritual and deeply human, emotional healing work, spiritual transformation work, and how the two blend together and offer people true deep change and transformation. And I've been doing this work for about 7-8 years. And it includes a lot of, I was a personal trainer before moving into my own deeper relationship with spirituality and working with people on that deeper level. So the basis for all of my work usually begins with the body and the information that our bodies hold and the intuition and building a trust with our bodies so that we do feel safe to go into those more expanded states of consciousness. And it's evolved over the years, the work that I do, the awareness that I have, and how I offer that continues to just grow and evolve and change. But the foundation remains the body, the humanness, and that deep appreciation for the life that we're living, and not trying to transcend that, but use it to enhance our divinity.
Yeah, I love that. And being grounded in the body and having that physical experience is not something we get to witness a lot in the spiritual communities, I think. Well, at least that's also been my experience. Starting off on that journey 20 years ago, it was very much about, like, you see my background, like going out there and just, being all ethereal and in bliss mode. And just realizing that when I'm in that bliss ninny thing, then I don't really get to participate in anything that makes this life worth living. So has this been an experience for you? As you say, like, going on this journey, you always deepen it throughout your own experience. You get to deepen your work and what you offer. But have you always been this this deeply bodily rooted in the physical, or has it also been more of an aha moment for you?
I think it has, excuse me, my relationship with my body has varied. Most of us have experienced some version of trauma that tends to lead us to disassociate or to have maybe a relationship with our bodies that isn't very healthy and loving and kind. So I guess I'll say that it's weaved its way in and out, meaning that by noticing that I didn't have a kind relationship with my body. Let's say when I was a personal trainer, I was trying to control my body. I was in my body, but I was trying to control it and manipulate it. And, I hardened myself. And so I wasn't as open-hearted as I could be. I wasn't as fluid as the spiritual journey asks us to be. And through that awareness, then I could see, oh, wow, I need to soften. And there's some armoring that I've done over my lifetime. And then through breath work, which was one of the central tools of my own relationship with body and spirit, I recognized where trauma lived in my body and how it developed that relationship of either wanting to protect or disassociate or manipulate my relationship with my body. And yeah, I think the shorter answer is that I think that I've always kind of sensed that spirituality, whether it's coming in the form of religion, like I grew up Mormon, so very strict religious upbringing, that I felt that most of the people that were teaching those teachings at that time, but also some spiritual teachers in like the more esoteric communities, did not feel like they were grounded in their humanity. And that was something that made me feel like I couldn't trust those people. So I think that there's always been this sense of like needing to be real, needing to like, let's actually talk about what it means to be on this spiritual journey, which I like about your approach. Is the most important thing to me is talking to people in a real way that's tangible about this experience that's so individual and sometimes so lonely, so that I can hear and other people can hear my experience, so that we feel less lonely and that we have some sort of GPS to say, okay, I'm not crazy. I don't need to go back to that 9 to 5 or whatever fear and the worry becomes. It's like, okay, let's talk about the real thing. Okay, this is a real experience. This is how it feels in the body. This is how it feels to evolve and to have all of the things that were once markers of success fall away, and to be left with just self. And that is so lonely.
Absolutely. And that's it, right? That I'm sometimes wondering, like, would I even recommend this journey to anybody that
Mm-hmm.
says, Sasha, sounds like a great idea, spiritual awakening, let's do it. Or, like any form of self-development. And I'd be like, yeah, maybe you want to kind of, really check with yourself. But, then again, when you ask yourself that question, you're already well on your way, I think.
Exactly.
Um, it's very interesting. I mean, I grew up in Germany. I'm German. I live in the Netherlands now. So for me, the whole Mormon way of growing up, or like developing or evolving in that system, is not very known. And I don't know about the audience, of
Mm.
course. I think when you're American, you kind of know it a little bit better. But um, just explain it to me like as if I was a 6-year-old, please.
Mm. Well, it's interesting that you say like a 6-year-old, because that's where the manipulation starts, right? It starts when you're
Mhm.
such a child, that you're told that this is the true way, and your family believes that, and it's quite an insular community. Most Mormons are typically only friends with other Mormons. Maybe they have some friends outside of the community, but it is very much a community-based religion. And so it makes you believe that if you move outside of this, almost like a cult, it, I believe it probably is a cult to some degree,
Mm,
um, that if you move outside of this, that you're in danger.
mm,
So I grew up believing that this is the one true religion, and all of the rules that we're meant to follow are so that we can stay within this religion and transcend to the kingdom of heaven once we die. Um, it is an it is an offshoot of Christianity,
mm.
um, and it is a fairly new religion. I can't remember what year it was started, but by Joseph Smith, who was in New York and apparently had a download and went and dug up these plates that were buried, and the Book of Mormon was in these plates, and then it was transcribed. And wow, this is, it's they use the Bible, and the Book of Mormon is an extension of the Bible. um, so it follows a lot of Christian guidelines as far as things that are deemed sins, including homosexuality and divorce, and a lot of the things that, like, let's say, a Catholic religion um, would mark as sins. Um, yeah, so it's fairly Christian, but there are also rules like no drinking caffeine. There's at a certain age, there's a certain type of underwear that you're supposed to wear. There's the temple that you go to at certain ages, and you start to get deeper, kind of like Scientology. I remember watching the Scientology documentary and witnessing, like, the older you are, the further you get into it. Like, at first it sounds like, nice, so this makes sense, and why wouldn't you want your family in this religion? And the further you get, you realize, whoa, this is deep manipulation.
Mm.
And yeah, it's been a long time undoing those initial stories that I was told as a kid.
Yeah, I can imagine. And your family, your parents, were they the ones that sort of tapped into this first, or were they also raised in that way?
My mom was raised Mormon for
Mhm.
generations. My dad converted shortly before he met my mom. Um, and then throughout our lifetimes, throughout our family's lifetime, I was pretty much the first one to say, I'm out. I'm not doing
Yeah.
this anymore.
How old were you?
And 16.
Mm. How did that land?
Well, it came along with me coming out as gay.
Mm.
So um, it was understandable that I wouldn't want to be a part of the church.
Was it part of the reason for you, do you think?
Yeah, I started questioning. I remember being like 13 and 14 in Sunday school class and listening to the teacher. And I'm like, wait a minute, that thing you're saying doesn't make sense with the thing you just said like 20 minutes ago. And I was often the one that pointed those things out. And, most kids didn't do that. So I was already questioning the validity of some of these things, even though I really did like the spiritual aspect and I liked the community aspect. And I liked the fact that it gave me a connection to something, because I did always feel that there was something more than just whatever was I could see, taste, and touch.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, yeah, it was hard because it disappointed my mother. And so that became a problem between us and in the family, and other people didn't understand. But I actually set the tone for many other family members who now, almost 30 plus years later, the majority of my family does not go to church anymore. So they've come to me at different points on their own journeys saying, I'm starting to question things. This doesn't make sense. I don't really know why I'm still going. So that's been validating.
I find that this is part of the reason why I want to have these conversations, right? Because I think it's so valuable to talk about and I don't want to say hardships or difficulty, because, we've talked about the topic of suffering with Amar in the first episode. But I think that taking ownership and really stepping into the self-inquiry forces us to unpack all of those layers that were given to us, right? And talk about a 6-year-old, right? The whole belief of a 6-year-old is that innocence, right? Like it's innocent driven. And like you say, so you grow up with the values of community, like, there's spiritual values that sort of reinforce the goodness and, just the sharing and service contribution. So it's funny that in a way, I was thinking as you were speaking, aren't those also the pillars of our own spiritual understanding of how we live now, right? So 2 questions, like number 1 for me is it necessary to completely remove yourself from these things or from these belief systems, do you think? And number 2 would be, yeah, maybe let's just start with the 1.
Yeah, I do. I think that individuation is a key component, and if not the very beginning phase of going into a deeper relationship with a personal relationship with spirituality, and going into, let's say, an awakening process. Because you have to set everything outside of you so that you can see it and choose what you maintain and keep, and relate to things that you were taught in a way that makes sense to you instead of just inherited. And the pillars, as you said, were really important. I have said many times over my lifetime that I'm very thankful for that initial foundation of spirituality and connection to purpose and community, and a framework for seeing life through. And I'm thankful that I got to exit that and choose over time what of those principles works for me and what is truth to me, because that's extremely important. And I don't think that anyone can tell us what truth is.
Mhm.
And individuating is the process of discovering that.
Which basically means that everything needs to be, like you say, sort of put outside of you. It's like the metaphor comes to mind that, you know, if you live in a really messy house, then you want to sort of put everything outside of one
Exactly.
room to say, okay, let's just know, you know, let's just know what we have, and look at, you know, what parts are what, and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which parts were just, am I expected to just keep for the sake of keeping them. And so I think it's really valuable to talk about it. And the second question was, um even though, of course, like it does sound, like you said, it's a bit stricter than like the typical maybe religious systems. But then again, you know, as you were describing it, if I take the whole charge out of it, then for me it just sounds like any other, you know, and not
Right.
any other religion, but any other belief system, whether it
Yeah.
be political or religious or
Right.
lifestyle or health or sexuality, or, you know, it doesn't really matter, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's this, you know, this is what you conform to when you agree um, to be a human, you know, to be part of
Mm-hmm.
humanity and society. And unless you come to that point where you go like, wait a second, like, is this even mine? You know,
Exactly.
questioning those parts of it. Um, and I don't know if this is too personal, right? Because we've never spoken, so it's also feels like
Nothing's too personal. I'm
okay,
okay with all of it.
great. Um, your homosexuality, do you think that it was a liberator in your motivation? Did it actually give you more um, conviction to question and to step out of it, you think?
Yes, yes. I'm so thankful for that. And it's also interesting as you were talking about belief systems and like that it could be political or about sexuality or about health. It's so true that like we can really find a place in a, let's say, a specific community, and then we often take on the dogma of that community. And I think um, I don't even really like the term gay anymore. I've
Mhm.
been leaning more towards I'm a homo, which is the easiest way to kind of say, like, you know, this is generally my where I am relationally and romantically and
Mhm.
sexually. But gay has become a label that then kind of like requires a certain way of thinking about self and community that I don't necessarily also agree with. But to your question, I am really thankful that I knew at a very young age that I was different, because it
Mhm.
made me look around for better and for worse. You know, there's a lot of things that I had to kind of tend to my own emotional needs and disconnect unintentionally and unconsciously because I was a child. But knowing I'm different, this is probably not acceptable in the culture and the space that I live.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go internal and I'm going to have, you know, I'll close myself off in a way. And that also allowed me to um, to think in the ways that I wanted to think and needed to think outside of what I was taught at a very young age. So I think it absolutely helped me on my journey to self-discovery.
Mm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think there's a lot of people who can relate, and by absolutely sort of offering these nuggets and pieces of wisdom, I think my hope is that we can really empower and inspire people to um, relate to it in a way that they know, like you say, you know, you're not weird, you're not alone. There's others going through this. Whereas I think in the beginning on that journey, you know, life sort of makes sure that you are very much on your own in this, because
Mm-hmm.
you lose your friends. And, you know, like even if you take another bold step, like you stepping out of a community like that and really abandoning the old life and all of that whole foundation of it. Um, that's the, you know, and then you think like, okay, I'm through the worst, right? And then, you know,
We have to
further
do
on
that
that
multiple
journey.
times.
And that's the part that I did not expect. Like you think, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this just takes, you know, one bold step for mankind. It's
Mm-hmm.
no, it's like this constant
Mm-hmm.
looking at, you know, like excavating those deepest
Mm-hmm.
layers that sometimes are so locked away because, you know, maybe we weren't ready to deal with them, and maybe we weren't maybe it was just wasn't the time for it, right? But when it is the time for it, and you know, it is in your face, like, you know, once you've said yes to this journey, then
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, then that's what you kind of have to deal with. um I'm really curious though to hear how you did you need to remove yourself physically too? Is that when you moved away, like from your family? What happened
Yeah,
afterwards?
yeah. So I came out when I was 16, and the 2 years before, there was 2 years before I left the house. Um, and in that time was, uh, yeah, it was a struggle of claiming my truth and my independence while still being a child, you know, living
Mhm.
in my parents' home. But the day after I graduated high school, I moved to the big city, Seattle, which is where I met Amar, like probably
Mhm.
months after I moved there.
He said, we were babies.
We were, we were, and we've said how throughout that our souls have agreed that in this lifetime we would help walk each other through
Mm,
the journey, because
beautiful.
our life paths since we've met have been parallel.
Mm,
And without him, and I think this is, I mean, it's such a gift. And maybe there aren't that, maybe there are people that are going through this that don't have absolutely anybody, but he and I have had each other to not feel crazy. And sometimes we've been the only person that can even slightly understand what the other is going through. And
mm,
one of us might go through something a few months or a year before the other, and then vice versa. And so we can really support
yeah.
each other. Um, but yeah, I needed to leave my parents' house. Um, I needed to go wild, because I really lived in a restricted way, and there was something within me that knew that there's much more. You know, I would look
Mhm.
out into the world, and music and magazines at that time and movies. I was like, oh wow, look at how there are other people in cities. That's where I saw it mostly. There's people in cities who are living um, such different lives from me, and it
Mm,
looks so interesting and intriguing. And so raves and clubbing
mhm.
became my initial outlet. And I think back to those periods of time where I found pure ecstasy, often induced by drugs,
Mhm.
but also the community sense and the music and the shared moment and experience of transcendence that would happen on dance floors. That became something that really opened me up to, it enhanced my spirituality actually. Um, and thankfully, I didn't have addictive tendencies, because that
Mhm.
could have taken a completely other path. But looking back, it was a really key component to deepening my relationship with myself and my spirituality, because of having those ecstatic moments.
Do you think you were already on that spiritual path, or you know, like was it something you were very aware of, or did that come later?
I think until I was 11, we lived out in the country, and I was the baby of the family, and my siblings were much older than me. So often I was alone, and I would be me and my dog or other animals would go out into the woods and play and use my imagination. And I can remember even from then feeling that the natural world was my home and my church, and that things like Native American ways of perceiving and engaging with spirit realm, the nature, and how the two um, work together, that resonated with me a lot. So I think that I always carried some thread of that throughout my lifetime from my childhood moving on.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I think putting the pieces back together, right? Like after sort of going like, well, I'll just I'll just get rid of it. I'll throw it away. That, like, I think there comes a point in your life when you just go like, okay, I'm putting the pieces back together. Like, I'm getting rid of
Mm-hmm.
the story. Um I'm not stuck in the story anymore. I'm not a victim of the
Mm-hmm.
narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm allowing myself to reclaim those deepest parts of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I asked Amar when he suggested to have you on the show, I said, what would be your question for Rio? Because I always kind of want this to be passing on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the question that he had was, if there was one spiritual practice for somebody starting on this journey, which one would you say you'd recommend?
Mm. He probably already knows how I would answer. And that is breath work for me, because it makes the breath for me is the connection between spirit and physical, non-physical and physical. And for me, it enhanced my spirituality because it was visceral. I was, it was, I'm not taking a plant medicine or something like that. I'm not sitting with someone else telling me, passing down wisdom through, let's say, like a meditation practice and their particular way of meditating. It is a very personal
Yeah.
experience with self and with the divine, in a way that you can't deny, because you feel it in your body, and it can take you to awarenesses that somehow you can carry with you, because it is so visceral and it is so real in the moment. um, so for me, breath work has been the practice that I continue to come back to. It's central in my work with other people. um, yeah, so that's my one practice that I would suggest to many people. And of course, it's not for
Yeah.
everybody, but
No, but what I like about it is that, there's also no danger in getting stuck in a dogma, right? Like if it becomes so
exactly.
simple, like breathing, we all got to do it, you know, um, without saying like you have to try on this framework, and this is the only framework that will make you find that connection, that will
Exactly.
liberate you, I think breath
And it's
work.
a personal, yeah, sorry. It's
It's
a,
just we have so many ways nowadays, to call these things some very, like modern names, like oh, you got to do somatic work, and all of these labels that
mm-hmm,
rather than just saying, it's basically just, become aware of your inherent nature and how that breathes you, right?
mm-hmm.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
interrupted you.
Yeah. I like any practice or way of focusing or learning that allows us as individuals to create our own meaning, our own story, our own name for the divine, and how it speaks to us, how we are interrelated with it. Because, like you said, I think any dogma, any labeling that someone else tells us is the way often forces us to manipulate ourselves to fit into that dogma in order to believe it. And for me to be able to name things and figure things out on my own has been a very important piece. And I often don't read that many books. I don't, my knowing and my truth and my direct experience of my spirituality has come from my personal experiences. And I've found teachings and teachers to be helpful in small doses, but not that I fully need to like buy into everything that they're saying or the language that they're using in order to have my connection with my own spirituality. It's like that is a piece of the puzzle that I asked one time, one of my teachers, I was talking about feeling like when I was like posting a video on Instagram or YouTube where I'm talking about something that, you know, it's maybe 5 minutes long, I cannot talk about all of the caveats to what I'm saying. I can't talk about every single way that people might misinterpret or not get the whole story, or you know, really had this desire that I want people to understand and not misread what I'm saying or not get the whole story. And she said, you are like every person, you are throwing the seeds out into the garden, and you will have just maybe it's one seed of your wisdom that someone needs to hear, and they pick that up, and then they pick up another seed, and it's no one person or teaching is going to give the whole story, and that's the point.
That's
And that
so,
I really loved.
so, wow, yeah. Because in the end, I mean, I think we're around about the same age, right? Looking at the attention span nowadays and what we're asked to consume. Also talk to Amar about this, like, you know, our brains were never designed to take in so much information. So it's interesting to hear you say that um, also just, you know, you don't really want to read a lot. You don't want to put too much other experiences into your field. You'd rather go for your own physical experience. And what would your, not recommendation, but, you know, like, what would you say to somebody who is completely overwhelmed with the pace of mental activity that's required in society nowadays? Like, how would you say, apart from breath work, like, yeah, what's your take on that?
Like how to manage the overwhelm of constant being fed constant information. Oh man, it requires that. For me, I become aware that I'm overstimulated or have been given too much information when I feel, you know, scattered, and or I can't like hold a thought for very long. Um, did we freeze? We're good.
No, like,
Okay.
good.
Okay. Um, and yeah, that for me is my call to drop in with things that are real. You know, my dog, taking a walk in nature and being present with whatever is in front of me. Coming back to my physical senses. That's the way for me to then integrate. And especially, you know, there's sometimes where it's really exciting, right? Where even times with Amar and I will be sending voice memos back and forth, really like chewing on a subject and like really enjoying the process of like understanding something, or awareness is a new insights, and that can become so it can heighten us a lot, right? It can almost be like a high where it's like, oh my God, I never thought about it that way. That's amazing. But then too much of that doesn't allow it to actually integrate and become a truth. It's just a concept that is exciting and our mind likes to chew on it, but it actually doesn't then become something that's helpful or valuable or even accessible after that moment if we don't have the capacity to like drop it into our body. And what does that mean? And okay, I'm going to stop this conversation. And we do that every once in a while. Like, okay, this is amazing. I need to stop talking for a while because this is like amplifying me in a way that is keeping me from being grounded.
Yeah, and also getting much more sensitive, right? Like on this journey of self-connection. And I always think like when this machine gets too loud, and I am a very fast thinker, I am a very multi-passionate person, so it's easy for me to get lost in otherness,
Mm-hmm.
like whether that's in relationships or in things, or my focus is just, it's a gift because I can really zoom into something, but then I need to remind myself to take myself out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working with something lately that when I do feel that overwhelmed, because also, hello, we're in Gemini season, it's very loud and chatty at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I keep thinking like, okay, so all of these thoughts, sort of also declutter them and go like, okay, is it real and alive, or do I want it to be?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a double check, right? Like, is it something,
Mm-hmm.
is it just a churning for the sake of churning? Or is
Right.
it actually something that needs to be dealt with in my life, or that sort of I want in my life and that I want to tangibly interact with? And if it's just a thought, and that's fine too, do I want it to be alive in my reality and in my
Mm-hmm.
creation?
Mm-hmm.
So it's that question, like, is it real? Is it alive? Or do I want it to be? So I
I
think
think
that,
that's a
uh,
great thing to question, because I think that there's a time for the deep questioning and the exploring esoteric wisdom and or exploring like what's happening within ourselves. That we can get kind of stuck in spiritual transformation and not actually live and or not actually put into action in our lives the things that we're becoming aware of, and then our lives kind of stay stagnant, and we get really comfortable in the spacey realms, in the head realms, and we don't do anything with it. And it can feel like we're doing something because, wow, look at this new awareness. Oh my God, I'm
mm,
tired. At the end of the day, I'm tired. I haven't actually done anything physical, but I've been sitting in my room contemplating these concepts and, working my mind and my spirituality, and now I'm exhausted. And so there's like a whole aspect of our beingness that then gets ignored because we're not taking care of our physical body, we're not taking care of our home or our money or whatever that really needs our attention. So
that
I
is
think
such an important point.
it's a good thing to question, like, yeah, I could explore my whole life. I could explore spiritual principles. And would that help me in this lifetime? Would that keep me from actually what I'm here to do with the wisdom and the knowledge that I have? And how long do I go into these rabbit holes of mysticism without coming out and making it
Yeah, and I
practical?
think there was a time for that, like a few hundred years ago. Maybe you did need to go onto a mountaintop to sort of be in that secluded space and really find that self-connection, because also the overall energy was different than it is nowadays. I'm finding it more and more important to um, be in life. But like you say, right, it is a huge comfort zone that keeps you from that. And then you lose touch with what is just mental overstimulation and where am I
Mm-hmm.
just mentalizing the spiritual concept,
Mm-hmm.
and where am I not being honest with myself, right? Like, what does my life require right now? And I'm guilty of that. You know, there were several parts of my life that I really needed to face the uncomfortable accountability of, hey, you know, look at your books.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's other things that need more attention or that need that energy. And maybe it's also, I think, the judgment that comes with that, like, oh, I should have, and, you know, something, I missed that, and I didn't, you know, I didn't take that into consideration. And it's easy to judge yourself for that and to go into that whole victim loop. But to say, okay, now another part of me is ready to own more of this
Mm-hmm.
physical reality. Another part of me wants to flow into what it means to be human, and
Mm-hmm.
the whole concept of mastery, or what it means to be an embodied master, for example, for me has shifted so much over the past years that I now think it's such a simple quest, really, but it's not easy.
Yeah, and it does require presence, right? And
Mhm.
to not ignore one aspect for another. And certainly there are times when one part of life demands more attention. Um, and I've also been there. You know, I think it's pretty common for people who have some awakening journey or delve into spirituality to think that the things like career, money, and those things are passe. Like I don't really need to
Mm.
focus on those things. It'll all just work out. It'll all just magically come together. And or oh, that's evil. You know, I renounce money, and good luck. There are people
Mhm.
who can do it and have done it, and I think it's part of their soul's calling to, you know, highlight our relationship with money. And I think that for many of us, it's part of our reckoning is like, okay, I'm here. This is the system that I'm within. How can I relate to it in a way that works for me and serves me? You know, the you having this podcast, you being able to put out content that assists other people, I imagine is part of your soul's purpose. And in order to do that, you have to have internet, you have to have a computer, you have to feed yourself, you have to have the support and the foundation to be able to do that.
Mhm.
And that's something that I've been reckoning with a lot recently is my relationship with money, um, and how it has and has not served me in order. And I know that it has been the thing that has limited my reach in the what I'm here to do. And and if we're in a state of survival, which many times I felt like I have been in, um, there's not enough capacity to do the level of work that my soul and my heart are calling me to do.
Yeah, and you know, that is really something that I see a lot of folks struggle with, right? Because there's this innate separation when you're on that journey, right? Because you notice that, you know, you don't fit in with that, with the mass consciousness or with the masses. You know, you just, you take yourself out of that. And I think it's super important. You know, we've just talked about all of that. um but the danger is to, like you said, demonize it and to say like, oh, money is the root of evil, or you know, paying taxes or whatever. And I think this whole spiritual phase that, you know, people are going through is also coming to an end.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes more and more apparent that we need to shift our way of thinking. I loved what Marianne Williamson did, when she ran for presidency, or, for office, because she's such a hero and legend in the whole spiritual world.
Mm-hmm.
She had so many followers say like, oh my God, I never thought you would do that. Oh, with those people? And, like, why'd you
Mm-hmm.
do that? And then she said, well, everybody complains. All of you say, things need to change, but none of you really want to get in there. How are things
Mm-hmm.
going to change if we don't also take accountability for that? It's just like the micro and the macrocosm of taking accountability of your own emotions, like taking
Mm-hmm.
accountability of your life. And I think these separations just need to go out of the window ultimately if you want to live a full life. And we are living in different times than, Osho did, like
Right.
having wild, wild country.
Yeah.
So many Rolls Royces and, provoking a lot through that. I think there is a
Mm-hmm.
middle way that now is opening up for more of us, and I think um, it's good to address it. And I've especially over the past 2 years, 3 years maybe, I've seen so many people on that consciousness journey struggle with money.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost everybody. I would say it's over 90%,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
I agree.
And
And
then that shame with that, right? Like if you haven't got it figured out, like if you feel like really overall I'm on a good path with my self-connection and with my self-love, but money is missing, that means I must be doing something wrong.
yeah. And I like what you said about it. It sparked something in me when you were talking about how, let's say, like followers of Marianne Williamson might have said, with those people, oh my goodness.
Mm.
And I think about how important it is to have a variety of types of relationships with different types of people in our lives, and to not sequester ourselves with spiritual people only, because for a number of reasons. I mean, in my own experience, I can see that, and maybe this is part of my particular medicine and how I'm supposed to move through the world, but I can see that me having relationships with people who wouldn't necessarily consider themselves as spiritual, maybe they're open, but they're not like, we're not necessarily speaking the same language when it comes to spirituality, that by being in those spaces, I can crack the door open just by being me, not by trying to get them to believe a certain way or whatever. And so I can help influence people because they are seeing how I live my life and how I, my view of the world. And it opens people's minds who maybe have not had a lot of people in their life that think that way or live that way. And on the flip side, some of those people in my life are very financially sound and have the things in their physical world that really support them in their lives. And so I can see how much they flow with money, and that their relationship with money is better than mine is. And I can see like, wow, they're not worried about what money is or isn't. It's a tool for their
Mm.
lives. And I could use more of that. And so it helps me and it reminds me that that I can relate to money in that way as well.
Yeah, it's that separation and those bubbles, right? To say like, oh, but we're like these people. And every
Mm-hmm.
time that um you're ready to sort of embody more of physical reality, physical creation, you get to leave another part behind of, maybe even people that were like, well, I thought we were on the same team, and what are you doing now?
Mm-hmm.
And really for me, having been on this journey for over 2 decades, I think it's so interesting to see how I've moved through these different communities, and I was never a person for a commune, or I never wanted to live with any of them, like
Mm-hmm.
that was never my choice. Um, but it was nice to know that somebody could relate it. I was also like you, more of the person that had this one good friend or two good friends that I could connect with and do the reality check and go like, well, things are really crunchy. Is it just me or what's happening here? To sort of, we
Mm-hmm.
still need to externalize our thoughts. We still need to witness ourselves speak our new truths as they
Mm-hmm.
arise. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast, because if it's just always something that's just going on within me internally and I don't share, I mean, it's part, like you say, it's part of my vocation, um, to have these conversations and to talk
Mm-hmm.
about these things and to make it more relatable. And this is so funny that, like you're the second guest, this is the second episode, and it didn't start out to be a spiritual podcast. Like, even though it is, I'm so passionate about awareness and consciousness and the whole work of self-development or liberation, I want to have deep conversations with anybody. I want to have a deep conversation with a CEO that has a really big vision for a new endeavor. I want to have a conversation with a mother that's struggling with her children.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things that come easy for me to address, the things that you need to be really open and vulnerable about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's our responsibility to leave those breadcrumbs or leave those seeds along the way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think of like a couple of days ago, actually backing up throughout my um, career in this work, let's say, that like really started like 8 years ago, deepening into assisting others in transforming their lives, and deepening into talking about spirituality and talking about emotional healing and the things that have been important to me. I've been doing that as I've been going through my own process. And it has been, there have been a lot of my own beliefs about my worth and value in sharing what I have to say, a lot of comparison to other people and how they language things, and maybe they're a better speaker or they get to the point quicker, and I tend to wander in how I talk
Mm-hmm.
about things. Um and it has limited me, and it is
Mm-hmm.
limited until pretty recently. I just kind of got this feeling of like, oh no, you're exactly the person that a particular group of people need to hear from. And you're not going to say it like that person or that person. And you need to say exactly what comes up in your heart, mind at any time. Speak it aloud, even if it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel like it resolves in a point. Even if it's just words talking about the process of the experience of being human. Somebody just needs to hear that in this moment and stop limiting
Yeah.
your gifts by comparing it to someone else.
It's so
And
recognizable, Rio. This has been the story of my life. The amount of years that I've spent trying to, hold back, adjust myself, like hide myself, not be so loud. And in a way, it's been such a liberation for me to just come out, even though I feel I'm not ready, even though I feel like, there's certain things I don't have figured out at all. Like yesterday I had a session with somebody and we talked about like there are parts of my reality right now where I feel I've failed. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that aspect still comes up and says, like, who are you to think
Mm-hmm.
that you can share something here, right? But for me, diving into human design has been a huge revelation as well, because I saw that we are so unique, we're so individual, we're so designed to be exactly that flavor, and it needs to be witnessed. The power of witnessing somebody, allowing an opening, right? And showing that energy in its purest form.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it doesn't make sense because, again, we're still talking about making sense to other people and how important it is to help other people with information, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about the frequency that's behind it and why
Exactly.
sometimes something needs to be said. And I've just had that big realization, and I really want to hear your experiences with that too. But a part of my human design, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. And
A little
ultimately
bit.
it doesn't really matter so much for also our audience here. A part of that is a channel of mutation. I've got the 360, which connects the sacral to the root, and it sometimes has a mutative power that just wants to break through. And I've spent 49 years trying to shush
Mm-hmm.
that part of me,
Mm-hmm.
to not be so impulsive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been eating me up.
Mm-hmm.
It's been really turning against me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now also, in the whole connection with the feminine and the masculine realignment and all of that, allowing that to come in there and saying like, and that's exactly what it needs to be. If somebody feels offended by it, then so
Mm-hmm.
be it. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody can't do anything with it and thinks, I had a comment on my last little reel that I've posted on Instagram. Oh, do we need the filter? I'm like, I'm not sure about we, but I'm gonna do what I feel like.
Yeah. Knowing that it's all a projection anyway, anything that
Exactly.
one perceives
And
is,
I've been on that other side as well,
yeah,
where I had judgments. And
yeah.
so let's talk about that maybe, like, you saying, limiting yourself, censoring yourself, thinking like I need to say the thing that other people can really hear, and like feeling
Yeah.
the responsibility of the inner purpose
Mm-hmm.
to really fulfill that role, right?
Mm-hmm.
How's that been for
Yeah.
you?
Oof. It has been a push-pull. It has been a lot of opposing thoughts and feelings that for since the beginning of like posting videos on YouTube
Mm.
and really being seen. I remember, when I first really started like announcing myself as a spiritual person, let's say, I would go into free writing and end up channeling something that I knew wasn't me. And I would share these beautiful transmissions on Facebook. And and I had a friend who I now look back and go, I don't know how much of a friend he actually was, but the people that were very far outside of having any relationship to spirituality that really tore me apart on Facebook in comments, like basically like, who are you? You're a fraud, blah, 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 like really aggressive, mean things. Um, and I will pin that for a second to say that going back and looking all these years later, I can see that he was actually pointing to a bit of spiritual ego that I did have, because, you know, at the beginning of the awakening, you're like, wow, nobody else gets this. And, you know, so there is some spiritual ego that comes in. I'm sure he picked up on some of that, but it really made me pull back and edit myself a lot. And I even, up until very recently, writing my newsletters, there would be this voice in the back of my mind that would use a friend who I don't consider as very spiritual. I would read my message through their lens and almost like start editing it so that they would understand it. I'm like, I'm not actually speaking to this person. Why am I reading it? They're probably not reading this. They don't care. But a lot of looking at myself from the outside and making adjustments to my core message through the lens of those other people. And I know that I'm a projector in human design. And the bit that I know about it is that part of the purpose, and you please tell me more if there's more context for what I know, but part of the purpose of projectors is to come and see things differently and to help other people see things differently. So we're going to be different. We're going to be misperceived. We're going to see things outside of the box of the majority.
Yeah,
Is that accurate?
absolutely. That is very accurate. And the projectors come with a very unique, I mean, everything's unique basically, but I think the projectors have a very special gift, because they are here to guide, right? Like if you look at the 5 different types in human design, I don't want to dive into the rabbit hole of it, but it is in the context of what you're saying. So we've got 5 types. We've got the manifestors, we've got the generators, we've got the manifesting generators, the projectors, and the reflectors. And that's also, in a way, there's an order to it, right? Like if you want to say that the life force, life work energy, those are the generators. Those are the types that need to be lit up to, you know, like use their sacral fire to get shit done, right? Like that is that creation energy of putting things into, you know, creating, building. The manifestors, the pure manifestors, are the ones that, you know, can just go and manifest in a way by putting new visions out there and all of that. And then we've got the reflectors who absorb a lot of that and play the mirror and say like, oh, you know, I'm going to mirror you in such a way that you understand yourself better. And the projectors have that very important role to guide all of us through it, because the projectors come with a wisdom, an inherent wisdom that doesn't need to be sought by the journey of self-discovery. In a way, I think that probably the journey of self-discovery for the reflectors and the projectors is the least important part, if you want to look at it like that. Of course, we're all human, we all need to work through certain things, but a projector is here to guide. And if you look at it like if there was a company, the best role for a projector would be in the CEO position, while the generators and manifesting generators are the workforce. You know, so there's a certain way that you can really see how that all fits together. And there is no coincidence why certain people come together, because through our aura, through our, you know, your projector aura, my manifesting generator aura, we attract each other. Like it's really this beautiful dance of attracting the energies into our lives that we need to play off of, right? Because none of us exist in isolation.
Yeah. And I think that it must be my experience of feeling like I do have a purpose to guide and help others. It feels like, oh, the
Mm.
shadow side of that is like, but who am I?
Mm.
How can I say that? I'm just an individual with my own problems, my own struggles. Um,
Well,
but
sorry to interrupt you here, but that's
yeah.
exactly that point. Like there are parts of us that on the shadow frequency of things shine forth. And as a projector, your biggest pain point will probably be to not be seen or invited.
Mm-hmm,
Like always feeling left out, always feeling like I'm not part of that. And
mm-hmm,
because you guys need to basically wait for other people to pull that out of you and to invite you and
mm-hmm,
to say, could you please share your wisdom with me, Rio? Because I feel
mm-hmm,
that you've got something to contribute. If I don't ask you and you share with me, then it feels very much like, whoa,
mm-hmm,
you're being
mm-hmm,
intrusive. So there's that whole dynamic. Um, in human design, they call it the not self, right?
mm-hmm,
Or like as a manifesting generator or generator type to think that I need to initiate. No, I'm here to respond. I'm not
mm-hmm,
here to initiate. I'm here to check where my gut responds and go like, yeah, I've got energy for that. Or no, I don't have energy for that.
mm-hmm,
So all of these things, I think, I'm glad that I came across these things pretty late on my journey,
mm-hmm.
because they're not the tool that fixes everything, but they
Right.
are a great extra perspective that I can put on top of things and say like,
Mm-hmm,
well, kind of all makes sense.
mm-hmm. Yeah, when I discovered what projectors are and the what our needs are, it gave me a lot of context and a lot of permission to
Yeah,
lean into my gifts and lean into the needs that I have. And it really did make sense. It does make sense to me and
yeah. Because you'll
helps me.
probably also feel that when you're around a generator type, like there is this, you can tap into that sacral, right? Into this machine that just wants to produce or you just, be productive in a way. And for you guys, it's so important to take yourself out of that field and to really come back to um, just feeling who you are without that, because otherwise you run the risk of burnout.
Hmm. Yeah, I have a couple of friends who are also in this world of healing and spirituality that seem to be able to like create courses and content and things just like, oh my God, I'm like, how are you running 3 courses at a time? How is your day so full? And I would compare myself, like, I cannot
Mm,
do that.
yeah.
Oh, I see why I can't do that. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that permission part, right? To really feel
Yeah.
like somehow you always knew. And
Hmm.
I've got 2 kids. My daughter is a projector and my son is a generator. And I'm a manifesting generator, my poor daughter. She's really like you can really tell and that but she's always been like that. That's why I say that that feeling of permission, that's the one thing I think everybody that comes across human design says sooner or later, like, wow,
Hmm.
it's just such a permission to I've
Hmm.
always known this since she was little, like she needed to take herself out of the equation, just be by
Hmm.
herself for hours and hours and hours, even when she was very little.
Hmm.
And it totally makes sense. Like my son was always like, let's play, let's play. He always wanted to have the hustle and the bustle, and she just needed that a long time. And it's still
Hmm.
so, she's also she is an amazing force of life and advisor, but also worker. And she can go there. I mean, she's got the route defined. So, it also depends on which centers are active depending on how you're designed. But she's still, like when she's worked 2 days in a row, like full time, she's like, you won't see me for a day.
Hmm. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is all of those different pieces, different lenses to look through. And I'm so grateful that you share your wisdom here with us because it's just adding another universe to looking at things. I've got 6 questions I always ask all of my guests, and I call them the sexy 6 because giving names to things just make me happy.
Mhm.
And number 1 is, what skill would you like to have?
Ooh, it's actually something I'm working on right now, which is music creation.
Mm,
That to me is a skill. You know, there's the talent and the inherent musicality, which I think I have. And then there's the practical of like learning things about how music works and learning skills either on instruments or on a computer to bring those things to life. So
Isn't
that's
it
probably the
amazing, like all of the different ways that we can support those learnings?
yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Um, a favorite book, movie, or song of all time, and why?
Oh, well, it has to be music because that's where I spend most of my time. Um, of all time, that's so hard. Okay, the first thing that comes to me of probably 10 favorite songs that I could name, one of them, which has just traveled as a companion with me from the time I was a teenager, is Closer to Fine by the Indigo Girls.
I
And
actually
to
don't know it.
Oh my God, it's so
Okay.
beautiful. It's really about the human journey.
I'm
It's
writing it down.
interesting. Yeah, the lyrics, it's a really uplifting song, but the lyrics are about all of the pathways that we take in life, that we go to the mountaintop to learn from the guru, and
Mm.
then we realize that that's not holding all of the answers. You go to a bar and then you wake up the next day with a headache, and like all of these seeking that we do, and then when you realize that everything is just okay, that you're like, and you stop the seeking, that you're closer to fine, and that being
Uh,
closer to fine is important.
I'll need to listen to it. So they managed to pack all of that wisdom that we take an hour for or something into a few
Exactly. Yeah,
minutes.
we
That's
could just play
awesome.
that song right now.
Uh, then another question. If you could spend an hour with anyone, no matter if now dead or still alive or a fictional character, who would it be and what would you do?
Mm, I think it would be my grandmother.
Oh.
She lived with me, our family, until she died when I was 16. And she was a
Mhm.
pivotal role in my life. She was the safe haven for, that's going to make me cry.
No.
The safe haven for self-exploration and complete. Was the epitome in my life of unconditional love. So
Mm. Beautiful.
yeah.
And she got to stick around to see you become the young man that was about to break free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I got to, she died in our home. My
Mm.
mom took care of her while she went through the dying process. So I
Yeah.
also got to see the complete cycle of life in witnessing her physical decline until she passed.
Yeah.
So that was a gift also.
That's so sacred, right?
It
Yeah.
is.
Um, almost makes, the next question feel very profane, but if you were president of the world or New Earth, what would your first law be that you would implement?
I don't like laws. Um, this is just coming to mind that if you have a judgment of someone else, that you immediately must see how the judgment that you have in someone else lives in you.
I
Which
love
I guess
that.
is a law of the universe, right?
Yeah. And that's why we need a projector president, absolutely. Sharing the wisdom. What's your most controversial opinion?
That most of the ways that we identify ourselves as human are bullshit.
Hallelujah.
Especially, we're living in a time where identity is like, could we possibly section ourselves off into smaller and smaller groups that identify in more and more specific ways that just, to me, it's the thing that is holding us apart. And I don't think that that's what anyone who is connecting to a strong identity wants. And I know that what everyone is doing is wanting to be able to validate themselves and their existence, but in the bigger picture it has to fade away in order to like really connect and in order to really know who we are. So
Yeah.
I think it's a huge hindrance to
I think you got to
our
do what you
evolution.
do until you know what you're doing, right? And
Exactly.
for me, it's just what came through when you were speaking. All of um, the way that people nowadays don't need to go through uncomfortable confrontations, right? Everybody has their algorithm and the way that they like it, and like they can just live pretty much without tension, like without friction or any discomforts of those confrontations until life calls them to.
Exactly.
That's, I think, because we are human beings and we require these rubbing off points, right? Like it requires that that the contractions, like to give life, it just needs that contrast. So I think
Yeah.
a lot of people don't have that, and that's why they need to create those extreme identities that tell them who they are, because there's just no other way that they would otherwise be able to have that knowingness about themselves.
I mean, for me to identify to understand that gay was a way to identify was really, really helpful. And I needed that when I was in a place where I didn't even know that that was a possibility. And I didn't know that I could name something about myself
Mhm.
that was different than the people around me. So it was helpful, but only to a certain point. And it's then like, how much do I hold on to that identity? It was helpful to like move me along in my evolution, but then like all identities, we have to eventually
At
just
some
kind of
point, you
let
just
them
gotta let it
go.
go. Yeah, absolutely. The last question. What are you most excited about in the future? In the beginning of our conversation, you were saying that another chapter is coming to an end. So what's coming for Rio?
Yeah, I'm leaving this place, this town that has been so important to me and pivotal in my story and my healing, um, with no real plan.
Mhm.
I have a very loose and light plan, but the message to me, um, for what's next has been cut all ties and let all pathways be open.
Mm.
And I can feel every time I feel into what's coming next, I can feel the magic that will bring all of the people and the circumstances to me in a way that is orchestrated so divinely that I could never question the validity of being in an active surrender.
Yeah, wow. And that, I think, to know that in a way you've been prepared for this point, that everything can come through the trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be able to step into the void yet again.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you just go like, come on, This is
Yeah.
not my first boogie. So
Yeah, exactly. I'm not scared of it. And their, family members are scared for me. What's your plan? Well, I have like this very loose plan for the next 2 months. And then what?
mm,
I will be shown.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, you are a way shower. I think by walking your talk, by sharing yourself, by constantly holding yourself in the highest accountability. I mean, you've just absolutely enriched my universe, and
Thank you.
yeah, really inspired me to look at things again and again and again. And coming into the body, huge information. I mean, that's always a drop into the body. Yeah. Where can people find you and your work?
I'm most active on Instagram. I'm always posting things in my stories. And my name on Instagram is como un río, like a river. So I can be found there. My website is becomelifted.com. And that's where like events and more about my work and my story is there. And I think my YouTube is called Lifted with RIO. And that's maybe the place that I'm least active, but I try to post some videos every once in a while.
We'll link all of those in the show notes, and so that people can come and find you just like I found you. And it's been wonderful to get to know you, and I'm so glad that that Amar's rocket brought us together.
Me too. Yeah, this
Yeah,
has been a wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
yeah, me too, me too. And I wish you all the best. I mean, no doubt. Do I already feel I need to speak with you again to see what has transpired? And now you've got me hooked into curiosity. But I feel you'll be more than well, and all of my best wishes to you and all of my love. And yeah, maybe
Thank you
we
so
get to meet
much.
in person at some point. But
Perhaps we will.
yeah, up until then, I'm wishing you all the best.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for the
Yeah,
opportunity and the conversation.
absolutely. Thanks for tuning in to the Rocketwoman Show. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with your universe. We can always inspire each other's orbits. All episodes are available on YouTube and Spotify, and new ones are always released on a Friday. For updates, you can find me on Instagram at The Rocketwoman Show, and if you're interested in my work as a guidance coach, I work with human design, the gene keys, astrology, and plenty of other intuitive wisdom that I've collected over the past 20 years. So if that resonates, go and check out my website, thezencubator.com, or follow the Zen Cubator on Instagram or Facebook. I wish you a magical week and hope to welcome you back next time.